Hello, dear students. Today, let us discuss emotional development. For the topics for discussion, we have displaying emotions, emotions in early social development, temperament, and attachment. Do babies have feelings? Do they experience and display specific emotions such as happiness, sadness, fear, and anger the way older children and adults do? In one study, more than half the mothers of 1 month old infants said that their babies displayed at least five distinct emotional expressions: interest, surprise, joy, anger, and fear. Before we dig deeper into emotional development, let's talk about bonding. Bonding is the strong affectionate ties that parents may feel toward their infant. Some theorists believe that the strongest bonding occurs shortly after birth, during a sensitive period. Bonding happens in many ways. When you look at your newborn, touch her skin, feed her, care for her, you're bonding. Rocking your baby to sleep or stroking her back can establish your new relationship and make her feel more comfortable. When you gaze at your newborn, she will look back at you. In mothers who are breastfeeding, a baby's cry will stimulate the letdown of milk. When we say letdown, it's simply the release of milk from the breast. It's a reflex that happens when nerves in your breast are stimulated, usually by your baby's sucking, and signal the release of oxytocin, a hormone that prompts tiny muscles around your milk producing cells to contract, squeezing milk into the ducts. Bonding is also what makes parents want to instinctively care for and nurture their child. Sometimes the bond is immediate. Parents fall in love the instant they set eyes on their little bundle of joy. Other times, bonding with the baby takes longer. Studies have found that about 20% of new moms and dads feel no real emotional attachment to their newborn in the hours after delivery. Sometimes it takes weeks or even months to feel that attachment. So okay lang kahit na hindi immediate yung bonding. And yung ginagamit natin na bonding na term dito sa Pilipinas, na nakikipag-bond ka sa nanay mo, sa tatay mo. So that's different. So when we talk about bonding in developmental psychology, yung parent ang may affectionate ties dun sa kanilang mga anak. Attachment. It's a close reciprocal emotional relationship between two persons, characterized by mutual affection and a desire to maintain proximity. Attachment differs from bonding in that attachment occurs between an older infant, who is capable of forming an emotional relationship, and another person. Bonding is a one-way relationship that the parent feels toward the child. So these are the terms that you need to remember pag attachment. Close. Ka-close mo siya. So this is not a stranger. Reciprocal. No? If you like that person also likes you. Not in the romantic way. Pwede rin naman in a romantic way. There's an emotional relationship. No? And then it's characterized by mutual affection. Yun nga. Gusto mo siya, gusto ka rin niya. And a desire to maintain proximity. Gusto mo lagi mo siyang kasama. Siya rin gusto lagi kang kasama. And for attachment to be built, no, sa mga old, dapat yung bata, it's an older infant. Para kayang ibalik ng bata yung affection na binibigay mo sa kanya. So attachment, pagka sa malaki na, pwedeng sa nanay mo, sa tatay mo, pwede rin naman sa friends, pwede rin sa partner mo or if you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Kasi 'di ba, close ka, reciprocal, gusto gusto mo siya, gusto ka rin niya. There's a mutual affection and a desire to maintain proximity. Emotional development, displaying emotions. Do babies have feeling? Carol Izard and his colleagues have studied infants' emotional expressions by videotaping babies' responses to such events as grasping an ice cube, having a toy taken from them, or seeing their mother's return after a separation. So Izard's procedure is to ask creators who are unaware of the events that an infant has experienced to tell him what emotion the infant is experiencing from the facial expression the infant displays. Raters consistently see the same emotion in a baby's face. Other investigators find that adults can usually tell which positive emotion a baby is experiencing, like interest versus joy, from facial expressions, but the negative emotions, like fear versus anger, are much more difficult to discriminate because based on facial cues alone. Nevertheless, most researchers agree that babies communicate a variety of feelings through their facial expressions and that each expression becomes a more recognizable sign of a specific emotion with age. Sequencing of discrete emotions. This is a table for the summary of age of appearance of different emotions. Various emotions appear at different times over the first 2 years of a child's life. At birth, babies show contentment, disgust, distress, and interest. By the end of the second month, babies begin to display social smiles that are most often seen in interactions with caregivers, who are likely to be delighted at the baby's positive reaction to them and to smile back and continue whatever they are doing that the baby enjoys. Other basic emotions that emerge between 2 and 7 months are anger, fear, joy, sadness, and surprise. These primary emotions may be biologically programmed because they emerge in all healthy infants at roughly the same ages and are displayed and interpreted similarly in all cultures. By 12 to 24 months, children display emotions like embarrassment, envy, guilt, pride, and shame. These are complex emotions under self conscious and self evaluative. These require a sense of self and cognitive ability to evaluate one's actions against standards or rules. Let's talk about basic emotions. These are the set of emotions present at birth or emerging early in the first year that some theorists believe to be biologically programmed. Yung mga bata na 2 to 6 months old, natutuwa sila na kapag ka na-discover nila na kapag ka may inaabot sila, like yung mga toys, no, yung mobile, or nag-push sila ng button sa toys, tapos may music, they appear surprised or happy or joy. O, they will expect this, no, kakaulit. And then, uulitin nila, like in our previous discussion dun sa primary circular reactions and sa secondary circular reactions, no, when they center and not on their body but on objects or pwede sa toys. So, paano kapag ka yung toy na tumutunog na wala ng battery or yung sa pagsipa ng bata doon sa mobile, yung sa overhead mobile, yung nasa, I mean, yung inaabot niya, eh, pinipigilan siya ng adult. What happens? Emotions, no, may makikita kang emotions doon. For 2 to 4 months old, they get angry. Pagdating sa 4 to 6 months old, they feel sad. So, some learnings may be necessary for babies that are able to express emotions that were not present at birth. Next, we have complex emotions for 2 years onwards. Later in their second year, infants begin to display such complex emotions as embarrassment, shame, guilt, envy, and pride. These feelings are sometimes called self-conscious emotions because each involves some damage to or enhancement of our sense of self. Michael Lewis and his associates believe that embarrassment, the simplest self-conscious emotion, will not emerge until the child can recognize herself in a mirror or a photograph. This is a self-referential milestone. Kapag na-recognize na ng bata yung self niya by a mirror or sa picture, meaning nag-level up siya. By about age 3, when children are better able to evaluate their performances as good or bad, they begin to show clear signs of pride, like smiling, applauding, or shouting, "I did it," when they succeed at difficult tasks. No, example, nakasolve sila ng puzzle. They also show signs of shame, a downward gaze with a slumped posture, often accompanied by statements such as, "I'm no good at this." So itong mga to, ito yung mga self-evaluative emotions. So these are the emotions such as shame, guilt, and pride that may require both self-recognition, the child can recognize herself in a mirror or photograph, and an understanding of rules or standards for evaluating one's conduct. Next, we have socialization of emotions and emotional self-regulation. Emotional display rules. Each society has a set of emotional display rules that specify the circumstances under which various emotions should or should not be expressed. Sa ating mga Pinoy or even sa ibang bansa, they discourage crying sa mga lalaki. And you cannot express your anger or disapproval kapag may ayaw ka kasi you have to consider the feelings of others. No, that's an example. Expression of happiness or gratitude kapag ka nakatanggap ka na regalo. Tapos, kung ayaw mo ng regalo mo, you have to suppress it, no? Hindi mo kayang ipakita na ayaw mo yung regalong natanggap mo. When does this learning begin? Earlier than you might imagine, no? Consider that when mother play with 7-month-old infants, they restrict themselves mainly to display of joy, interest, and surprise, thus serving as models of only positive emotions for their babies. Mothers also respond selectively to their infants' emotions. Over the first several months, they become increasingly attentive to babies' expressions of interest or surprise and less responsive to the infant's negative emotions. Through basic learning processes, babies are trained to display more pleasant faces and fewer unpleasant ones. Regulating emotions. What is emotional self regulation? These are strategies for managing emotions or adjusting emotional arousal to an appropriate level of intensity. In the first few months of life, it is the caregiver who regulates baby's emotional arousal by controlling their exposure to events likely to overstimulate them and by rocking, stroking, holding, singing, or providing pacifiers to their over-aroused infants. Example, di ba, kapag ka sa party may mga mascot, may mga bata na takot sa mascot, ano yung gagawin? Kapag ka umiiyak yung mga bata, mas lalo ba silang ilalapit doon sa mascot? 'Di ba ang gagawin nila, ilalayo sa mascot saka patatahanin yung bata. 6 months old, for example, do manage to reduce at least some of their negative arousal by turning their bodies away from unpleasant stimuli or by seeking objects to suck, such as their thumbs or pacifier. 6-month-old boys find it harder than 6-month-old girls to regulate unpleasant arousal and are more inclined than girls to fuss and cry in an attempt to elicit regulatory support from caregivers. By the end of the first year, infants develop additional strategies for reducing negative arousal. Example, by rocking themselves, chewing on objects, or moving away from people or events that upset them. By 18 to 24 months, toddlers are more likely to try to control the actions of people. Example, sabihin ng bata, "Up, daddy," as a request to be picked up in the presence of a stranger or objects that upset them. They are also beginning to cope with the frustration of having to wait for snacks or gifts by talking to companions, playing with toys or otherwise distracting themselves from the source of their disappointment. Sa panahon natin ngayon, no, pagka ganitong pinaghihintay yung mga bata, binibigyan ng gadget. Pagka ganon, it's a bad strategy for reducing negative arousal kasi mas maganda yung um, sila sila yung makakaisip kung ano yung gagawin nila to regulate their negative arousal. Yet, toddlers find it almost impossible to regulate fear. Instead, they often develop methods of expressing fear that successfully attract the attention and comforting of caregivers. Consider, for example, that when 2-year-olds are made angry, like by having a toy snatched away or fearful by the approach of a stranger, they often choose not to express the anger or fear they are actually experiencing, instead, turning to caregivers while looking sad, which is more successful at eliciting regulatory support. These self-initiated actions are particularly effective at reducing distress when mothers notice them and offer their own comforting to draw their baby's attention away from the source of discomfort.